Good evening. Right now, as you're watching this, roughly 45 million Americans are living under an active heat alert. In Phoenix and Las Vegas, the thermometer hit 114 degrees. In parts of the desert Southwest, forecasters were talking about numbers approaching 120. And in Yellowstone National Park, a place most people associate with snow and pine trees, a high mountain pass hit 102 degrees last month and shattered a record that had stood since 1989 by a full 8 degrees. But here's the part almost nobody's talking about. This heat dome is not staying in the desert. It's expanding. And the forecast models say much of the lower 48 is about to get its turn. Let's break down exactly what's happening, why this one is different, and what the next 10 days look like. First, what a heat dome actually is, because the term gets thrown around a lot without much explanation. Picture a lid of high pressure parked over a region. Under that lid, air sinks. And when air sinks, it compresses, and compressed air heats up. That sinking motion also shoves clouds out of the way, so you get relentless, uninterrupted sunshine baking the ground all day. The ground heats the air above it, that air can't escape because of the lid, and the whole system feeds on itself. Day after day, it gets hotter. That's why heat domes don't just make one hot afternoon. They stack heat, compounding it over a week or more. This particular dome settled over the western United States at the end of July and reached full strength over the weekend of August 1st and 2nd. The numbers are worth sitting with. Dozens of record highs were likely set from California to Montana. Forecasters said it was possible that a few all-time monthly records would be tied or broken outright. Triple-digit heat stretched in an unbroken band from Las Vegas all the way north to Montana. Downtown Los Angeles reached the low to mid-90s, which sounds mild by comparison, until you remember that most of coastal LA is not built for it. Los Angeles was placed under an extreme heat warning, and the city opened cooling centers through the weekend. Las Vegas and Phoenix opened cooling stations of their own. The National Weather Service classified the risk across much of the region as major or extreme. That language is specific, and it matters. Major heat risk means a widespread threat to public health. Extreme heat risk means the heat can kill, particularly people without access to air conditioning, and that hospitals should expect a surge in emergency room visits for heat-related illness. And here's the detail that separates a bad heat wave from a genuinely dangerous one: the nights. In Phoenix and Las Vegas over the weekend, overnight low temperatures only fell into the upper 80s and low 90s. That's the low. That's the coolest it got, at 4 in the morning, in the dark. Your body needs a recovery window. Overnight cooling is when your cardiovascular system gets a break from the work of shedding heat. When that window never opens, when it's 91 degrees at sunrise, the strain simply accumulates from one day into the next. This is the single biggest reason heat waves turn deadly, and it's why the National Weather Service specifically flagged record warm overnight lows as a compounding danger this week. Extreme heat is the #1 weather-related killer in the United States. Not tornadoes, not hurricanes, not flooding. Heat. And it kills quietly, mostly indoors, mostly among older adults, people with chronic illness, outdoor workers, and anyone whose air conditioning failed or who couldn't afford to run it. Now let's talk about scale, because July already told us where this summer is headed. According to NOAA, more than 130 all-time high temperature records were set across the United States in July, and more than 180 records were set for all-time warm overnight temperatures. Read those two numbers next to each other. The nights are breaking records faster than the days. Many of those records fell in the high plains and in the Northeast, and dozens were set across Montana, Wyoming, and Utah. The Yellowstone example I mentioned at the top is a good illustration of how strange this summer has been. Lewis Lake Divide, that high mountain pass, hit 102 degrees on July 24th, beating its previous record by 8 degrees, which in record-keeping terms is enormous. But that same location also broke a monthly record for cold on July 1st, dropping to 24 degrees overnight. Same spot, same month, both extremes. So where does this go next? According to the National Weather Service's Weather Prediction Center, the heat that sat over the Southwest on August 1st and 2nd is expanding northward, through Colorado and Utah and into Montana, where temperatures climb into the hundreds. Major to extreme heat risk was forecast across much of the West through August 6th. Then it broadens further. By the end of the first week of August, high pressure is expected to expand again, pushing extreme heat potential from the west into the central and east central United States. The Climate Prediction Center's outlook shows much of the lower 48 facing at least a slight risk of extreme heat from August 7th through the 13th. For the eastern half of the country, AccuWeather's senior meteorologist Bob Smerbeck says warmer temperatures are expected across the eastern Ohio Valley, the Appalachians, the Northeast, and the Mid-Atlantic from roughly August 5th through the 11th. His read is that the raw temperatures may not be as intense as what that region saw in early July. but high humidity will make it feel worse than the number on the thermometer suggests, leading to what he described as uncomfortable days ahead. There is one piece of good news buried in the forecast. Smurbeck says a strong cold front may follow that stretch of heat in the east, bringing genuine relief. And NOAA's 3 to 4 week outlook shows more seasonable conditions returning to the northeast later in the month, though even then, much of the country stays unseasonably warm. There's a second consequence of this heat dome that's playing out in real time, and it's fire. The same sinking, drying air that makes a heat dome so hot also strips moisture out of vegetation. Over the first weekend of August, NOAA's Storm Prediction Center placed eastern Washington under an extremely critical fire danger designation, their highest level, with wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, capable of driving explosive fire growth. That is the setup that produced the Spokane disaster, where more than 700 structures burned and nearly 65,000 people were evacuated. Zoom out and the picture is stark. The National Wildfire System is at its highest level of preparedness. The National Interagency Fire Center reported more than 25,000 firefighters and support personnel working 87 large fires nationwide, most of them in the Northwest. Elevated to critical fire weather risk stretched from eastern Washington south into Oregon and Nevada, and east across Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and into the Dakotas. And the precipitation outlook doesn't help. From August 5th through 9th, below normal rainfall is expected across the Northwest and the central United States. The Southwest is the exception. Monsoon moisture there is expected to support heavy rain, which brings its own flash flood problems and burn scars and desert washes. A quick note on the water, too, since it's caught people off guard. Beach advisories went up along the California coast as swells from tropical storm. Genevieve churned up dangerous surf and rip currents. Similar advisories were issued for the south and southwestern shores of Lake Michigan across Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin, where the Weather Service warned of potentially life-threatening waves, up to 9 feet in Cook County, Illinois. If you're heading to the water to escape the heat, that's worth knowing before you go. On the bigger question of why, scientists are clear that human-caused climate change is making heat waves like this more likely, more intense, and longer lasting. There's also active research into whether particularly strong, slow-moving heat domes are becoming more common as the planet warms. That piece isn't settled, and researchers are careful to say so. So, to summarize where things stand, a powerful heat dome pushed temperatures to 114 degrees in Phoenix and Las Vegas, with readings in the desert approaching 120, putting roughly 45 million people under heat alerts and setting dozens of records from California to Montana. Record warm overnight lows are limiting nighttime recovery and driving the health risk. July alone produced over 130 all-time daytime records and more than 180 overnight records nationally. The dome is now expanding north and east, with much of the lower 48 facing extreme heat potential from August 7th through the 13th. Fire danger remains critical to extremely critical across the Northwest, with 87 large fires burning nationwide. If you're in an affected area, the advice is simple and it works. Find air conditioning even for a few hours at a library, a mall, or an official cooling center. Drink water before you feel thirsty. Reschedule outdoor work and exercise to early morning. Never leave a person or an animal in a parked car. And check on elderly neighbors. Most heat deaths happen to people alone indoors, and a knock on the door genuinely saves lives. We'll keep tracking this as the dome shifts east. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.